I love toys. The only thing I like more than toys is games. The only thing I like more than games is taking a sock and putting my in it with lean and you it off, and then you Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite game consoles of all time, one of my favorite video game launches of all time, happened on 9/9/99. We are talking about the Sega Dreamcast. Next, video games. I really hope we can still do that, because I wouldn't want that to be like a freaking long donkey. You know what? Video games! Let's go! Talk games! Yeah! You and me, baby! Talk games! I can't take it anymore! It's Talk games! So I skipped out on the Sega Saturn. I skipped out on the 32X, all that add-on nonsense, tomfoolery. I had my PS1, I had my Nintendo 64. And in other videos, I've mentioned how the arcade would look good, home consoles would catch up, and they would kind of leapfrog each other. And then arcades got really good. NFL Blitz looked great, fighting games looked great, and they overshadowed the graphics of the N64 and the PlayStation 1 and the Saturn. That was until 9/9/99. And Sega had a great campaign leading up to this date. The Dreamcast fared well in Japan. Japanese people embraced it.
I like it.
And I was really excited for this game for a bunch of different reasons, and we will get to that. But on 9/9/99, I go to a local game store called GameCo. And those are, a dying breed. Most local game stores, if they do exist, sell retro. Well, GameCo had retro and new. And that's where I got my Sega Dreamcast. And boy, was it a really, really sound, smart, great. I know a lot of people were waiting for the PlayStation 2, which came out, I think, the next following November. But if you got the Dreamcast at launch, you got Soulcalibur, which looked and played just as good as the arcade, which at that time Soulcalibur looked really good in the arcade. So to have a home port that looked on par with the arcade was mind-blowing. Sonic Adventure, another great launch game. Ready to Rumble Boxing, quietly, secretly, whatever. I know people know it for all the wacky unlockable characters. I think Bill Clinton is in there and Hillary Clinton maybe. It's much like NBA Jam, where you have all these weird unlockables. Ready to Rumble Boxing has some of the best early physics for a fighting game, the way you move around that ring. NFL 2K. I know sports games are boring, but it used to be, to sell a console, you needed a great fighting port, you needed a great racing game, and you needed a great sports title. Sports games used to drive console sales, even if it was something like golf. Sega didn't have golf, baby. They had NFL 2K, and it was brilliant. The first time I saw NFL 2K, I almost, I don't want to get too weird, but I had, it was such an experience. It was, I couldn't friggin' believe what I was playing in that controller. And let's talk about that controller for a second, because it is odd. Had something called the VMU, which on paper was great. In NFL 2K, you saw your playbook on the controller, because, back when you played couch co-op, people would see your 3 plays that would come up, and one of the 3 obviously would be a play you were running. So the VMU allowed you to see on that tiny screen, and it worked really well. I know the games would have like your inventory or your health bar, and it was like a Tamagotchi, whatever those things are called. In theory, that's what it was supposed to be when you took it out of the controller. For me, it wasn't that fun. I know in Sonic Adventure you could hatch eggs or whatever the little goofy things were, but I did love the visual memory unit when it was in the controller and you could see your health bar, playbook. You had a rumble pack for the back of the controller. The controller was kind of cumbersome, but at the time it was very unique, very clever, very fun. 4 controller ports on the front of the console, taking that idea from the Nintendo 64. NFL 2K played and looked like a dream, and that game is still beloved, that franchise, to this day. Where Madden has all these problems and people make full channels dedicated to hating Madden, NFL 2K will never be hated. Always will be beloved. Speaking of beloved, let's talk about some other games that I loved. I mentioned Soulcalibur, Sonic Adventure, but you know what game that launched that I couldn't get enough of? This weird little title called Blue Stinger. Now, Blue Stinger had, it's funny because I love Blue Stinger, and it had production faults where some of the discs wouldn't play. I had to go back to Walmart like 10 times to get a playable disc. Blue Stinger is like a B-movie mixed with Resident Evil, but it's much more cartoony. And what I loved about it is, you had these vending machines, and you could kill zombies and grind. People love to grind in games these days. Back then, it was kind of a new concept. You know, you grinded in games in like Final Fantasy to beat a boss, but to grind for money was something unique. I would fight zombies over and over and over again to be able to buy these kooky weapons in the vending machines. And one was a lightsaber. You're running around killing like these creatures with a lightsaber. The game, at the time, was killed from reviewers. They hated it. Look up that game now. It's like a cult classic now. It really needs to be ported over to some kind of compilation disc. It deserves it. Blue Stinger is a very odd, charming, fun, beloved game for me. What the Dreamcast also had was a built-in network adapter. First console, home console, to allow you to go online and play with other people. The game that really propelled this, that's the right word, right? Pushed it forward. Phantasy Star Online. This was I've heard of games like Evergrace, and I've heard of Warcraft, and I've heard of other online games at the time that I predated Phantasy Star, but Phantasy Star was my online game. I love science fiction, I love role-playing mechanics. You've had both of these things colliding. I can't even talk, I'm so pumped up. The other clever thing Phantasy Star did was, if someone was from a different country, this is all just typing on a keyboard, which Dreamcast also came with. Someone was in another country, whatever they typed out would come back in my country in English. It had some type of technology that allowed that, so there was no language barrier. You could play at midnight on a Wednesday, you could play at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, and there was always a ton of people online. Phantasy Star Online, I couldn't get enough of it. Playing online on my couch was mind-blowing. The Dreamcast did a lot of things right out of the gate. It also did a lot of things wrong, though. It had poor, what would you call it? It allowed people to burn games and play them right on the Dreamcast, just on a regular old CDR, if I recall. So piracy ran rampant on the Dreamcast and caused a lot of them software sales to decline. They also didn't have the foresight to have it also play DVDs, which was becoming very popular because of films like Gladiator and older films being put to DVD. That kind of hurt them a lot. So Sega had this tremendous launch and buzz, and they had great games that came out like Power Stone 1 and 2. Great fighting game. Dynamite Cop. Even things like House of the Dead, which were great because you could just buy the light gun accessory. It really was like you had the arcade in your living room. But one of the things that killed them besides piracy, besides not having a DVD player, is by the time they got big name games like Resident Evil and Madden and other bigger RPGs, it was a little too late. But the Dreamcast will always be one of my favorite systems of all time. I gotta mention games like Skies of Arcadia, which was brilliant, Sega GT. And I didn't love it when I bought it at the time. It felt mind-blowing, but it also felt like a chore. I have to mention Shenmue, broke new ground. There's another quirky game where Leonard Nimoy is like a freaking fish. The name escapes me, but that was a lot of oddball stuff on the Dreamcast. In my opinion, my two favorite, when I broke out a system to play, to do some retro gaming, two of my favorites are the TurboGrafx 16 and the Sega Dreamcast. Mainly because of the smoothness with the Sega Dreamcast, the 4 controller ports. You could always have a friend over right there to play games like NFL 2K, Jet Grind Radio. The list goes on and on. I will always love the Sega Dreamcast. That's it for today. Next time, we will talk about the game that blew all other consoles out of the water, and pound for pound might be the best console of all time, the PlayStation 2. As always, take care, have fun.
Woo! Like, comment, subscribe. Yeah!